Where exactly are Rice and Powell in this whole dance? I only heard one person say something about Condoleezza Rice, but also Colin Powell, so those two.
Powell did not want to go along with the program. And he was basically pressured to sell the war to sell the war on Iraq. He was in the White House at the time when post 9/11 they were trying to ride that terror wave into Iraq. There were a number of offices, and I'm sure many of you have heard of them within the administration. There was the White House Information Group with Condoleezza Rice and company, who were they were the messengers, and the messages were being formulated for them to send out at the same time to sell the war and the images of the mushroom clouds. And then there was the Office of Special Plans for cherry-picking intelligence and putting it together in a way, again, that would sell disinformation to the American public. And part of the Office of Special Plans was also to put pressure on high-level people in the CIA, the NSA, and even Colin Powell not to go along with the program. But unfortunately, he buckled. And he's trying to get Bob Woodward to sort of right his mea culpa in a sense. But he was a big man in a tight spot, and he did not, I think, acquit himself very, very well. He didn't stand up and call a halt to the madness.
Rice took over as National Security Advisor with a different agenda. She's a Europeanist. She's an expert on the Soviet Union. Cold War, that's right. She was, and in a certain sense, I think is still mired in the Cold War. She came into the White House. She put down the issue of terrorism. The counterterrorism planning group, the crisis unit, which the Clinton administration had formed, she downgraded it. Richard Clarke, she demoted. The plan that he advised, she put on the file cabinet. That plan took then 9 months to get to the president's desk the day before September the 11th.
We have just seen that the events of 9/11 were enormous, multifaceted, multi-step. My belief is that an operation of that enormity was probably in the works for many, many years. The fact that it happened on 9/11/2001 puts the Bush administration only 9 months into it. Prior to it, as we know, for 8 years, there was Mr. Clinton in the White House. What is, to the panel's mind, was Mr. Clinton's and his administration role in the events of 9/11?
Who wants to take that? I would say that towards the end of the 1990s, you have the emergence of an oligarchical consensus that the entire U.S. ruling class, ruling elite, comes to see terrorism as the preferred means, indeed the only means, to provide social cohesion, to provide an enemy image for the society to keep it together. According to neocon theory from Carl Schmitt, you have to have an enemy image in order to have a society. They were concerned, of course, about world domination and geopolitics, the continuing Russian nuclear deterrent, the economic dynamism of China, which is rapidly overtaking the rest of the world, the demographic dynamism of the Islamic world. They were also concerned about the collapse of the monetary system, the fact that many countries are on the verge of dumping the dollar as a means of payment for oil, but also for many other things, for trade, and going to the euro or some other solution. And towards the end of that period, it seems to me that you have this oligarchical agreement that terror is the way to go. It's a very dangerous thing, because now it means that the entire social order, the political parties, intellectual life, politics in general, all based on a monstrous myth. Now, concerning these presidents, I think it's very naive to think that whatever puppet happens to be sitting in the White House is somebody who actually has power. One of the things I try to do in my book, I try to give you a thumbnail sketch of the mental wrecks, the impaired people, let's say, severely impaired people who have been in the Oval Office. Generally, it took at least one nervous breakdown to qualify as president. Now, Clinton is simply a plausible face for this apparatus that's sitting there, and I think it's a mistake either with Clinton or with Bush. Although I think now with Bush in the more recent phase, it's more serious. You got to go back to the fact that these people are simply figureheads.
Thank you, Webster. Next question. Thank you, sir, in the middle.
My name is Garland Roberts. I'm head of the Black Alumni at Brooklyn Technical High School. We were the first people on site with generators and everything else, and we met up with massive amounts of problems. We also were the people originally that were the third bidders on the emergency exit systems. We personally knew the whole of the systems that go through the 2 World Trade Center, 7, and the hotel, and physically didn't need plans or anything else on site. They continuously tried to keep us from getting involved. They were telling us, well, we didn't need you. We knew the things intimately. They wouldn't let us underneath because the kids had told us, and other kids that were involved with the subways, that they had come up in the under subfloors where they had the different switches that cut off the floors, and then we knew there were people trapped there. Now, there's another man that's important for your damn thing. That's Carl Ross, who was the other guy with us that we're trying to get them to let us actually draw out, show them where to go and everything else. Carl was important because when the first plane hit, he was late for work as an architect, and he was opening that door downstairs that comes from the, when you come from Jersey with the New Jersey path. When the plane hit and physically saw the rubble coming down, but the thing and he ran, but the thing that he questioned was he did not see JP4. And, you know, I don't know if you know, it's like a kerosene smell. He didn't get any of that down into that lower section that would have been part of the main structure. And nobody's addressed that at all. How do you get these other things into somebody to investigate? I'm not the goddamn media. I tried. I went to congressmen. I went to senators. I was with McCain. I joined the Republican Party to fight the goddamn right wing.
We have to ask, how did the lower parts of those buildings fail when they were cold steel and they had 100% of their structural integrity, and yet they fell? The North Tower fell faster than the speed of gravity. That simply is not possible.
Alex Jones, the Road to Tyranny creator, said on his radio show through a Secret Service agent on Saturday, a week ago, the Secret Service agent testified that he and his fellow agents and his agency has known for years, plural, years, that the martial law in this country is supposed to be implemented starting November 1st. Before November 1st, they need to have a major catastrophe in order to get us to accept that without a major fight on their hands. What do all of you know about this horrible shit that's going on in our lives, and why has it taken so long for a panel like this that appears to be an honest panel for the most part? Why has it taken so fucking long for this to happen?
At the beginning of June, I put out a release called Rogue Bush Backers Plan Super 9/11 False Flag Terrorist Attacks. And it essentially goes through the tremendous pattern of psychological warfare, terror demagogy, coming from the Bush administration, but also coming from Richard Clarke, martial law bureaucrat, Ted Koppel, the controlled media, and so forth. And what this points to, I think that the big turning point is Bush's speech of April 21st, because he'd been trading on terrorism before. In the 21st of April speech to the editors, he essentially said, there's going to be another round of terrorism, and we're going to make sure that Iran never gets a nuclear capability. Now, therefore, the great danger right now is a second wave of 9/11-style terrorism, 1 or 2 orders of magnitude beyond. In other words, the ABC realm, atomic, bacteriological, and chemical. What I did try to point out at the same time in that article was that there are countervailing forces. It's more or less this. if you get successful Super 9/11 terrorism, in other words, a new wave, you will essentially be freezing the neocons, Wolfowitz, Rumsfeld, Cheney, and so forth, into power, especially in the Pentagon. Now, who is there in the society who doesn't like that? I think the U.S. Army, strangely enough, is a candidate for not liking that. We look at Iran. Iran is 4 times the size of Iraq. It has 3 times the population. It's intact. It hasn't been bombed. It hasn't been starved by years and years of sanctions. When you look at Wolfowitz, the Army looks at Wolfowitz and they say, Iran is a meat grinder. He wants to put it into it. Are we going to allow Wolfowitz to have a coup and set up a neocon fascist dictatorship in the United States? I think the answer is there are some who don't want it, and that's the so-called Israeli mole scandal in the Pentagon is a desperate attempt to try to freeze, to stop that network from starting a war with Iran. I think that's
Webster,
the underlying
thank you
issue.
very